I'm excited, and I've been sitting there listening to Kate and Paddy and looking at this great picture of our Olympic city, and you just think, it still feels a bit weird, right? It's like the sort of, really? That's going to be where the Olympics is? And yet, it's going to happen, and it's going to be real. And I'm excited too, not only because that vista is going to become world famous with Queen's Wharf in there, and I think I saw Tim earlier, urban forest over there, a little bit shorter than you might have wanted, Tim. And I'm sure lots of other developments. But I'm excited mainly because I know that Brisbane is going to put on the best ever Olympics. We're going to have that moment, of course we are. It's going to be 16 magical days, for this city that we love. So I'm excited. I'm also a little bit concerned though, and I think I'm concerned because the biggest challenge that we've got is in not just viewing the Olympics, this 16 days of sport in a decade from now, and instead be viewing the Olympics as a once-in-a-forever opportunity for our city, for our region and for our state. And those 10 years are going to go very, very quickly. As we all know, where did this year go, let alone, it'll come around very quickly. So I'm really keen, and this is why we started Future Brisbane, this is why the Courier-Mail has been so far, backing so strongly this bid the whole way through, has been because of the opportunity for legacy out of these Olympics. What is it that we're going to look back on and say, wow, that was the catalyst for a whole lot of things? On the first day of our Future Brisbane series last month, James Toomer from Urbis, and he's here today, James cautioned that success in legacy will require both a clear strategy and also a shared commitment to deliver on that strategy. He said, it was just great, he said, all the great cities of the world, all the things they're famous for, they were the product of clear and bold intention. That it requires government policy, it requires incentives and funding, it requires bravery, and it requires a high degree of intentionality. And so that is what Future Brisbane is all about. Let's have that conversation. And so that's why I'm so excited that all of you guys are up here on stage to join us in that, starting that conversation today. And I might start with you, Premier, as the Minister for the Olympics. Congratulations on that appointment. Was it a long conversation? It's a significant week, though, jokes aside. It's a significant week with the legislation for the organising committee going through Parliament. And as I say, here you are, Annastacia Palaszczuk, the girl from, Durack, daughter of a migrant, the Minister for the Brisbane Olympics. It seems it's surreal, isn't it? It's a historic appointment. And I just really want to start by just asking, so when you think about that job, what is it that you think, this is what I really want to achieve while I've got this unique position?
Well, I think everyone in this room is here because they're excited about the opportunities that the Olympics presents. But fundamentally, for us to get the Olympics and to progress to the next stage, it's about relationships. And we've established, as Peter Gleeson said, very strong relationships with President Thomas Bach. And he's very happy with the appointments because it means that he has continuity of the people he has been dealing with. And people in the business community know how important those relationships are. They are even more important for the Olympic movement. So I'd like to say that first and foremost. Secondly, there is going to be a decade of opportunity and a decade after. So you talk about legacy and impact. It's not just about the southeast. It's not just about the competition. It's about how we set Queensland up for the golden age, and it is going to be a golden age. The Olympics bill is going through Parliament as we speak. It sets up the organising committee. That's going to be really important because it needs to be the people that are going to have the vision to ensure that things happen and to make the Olympics a reality. And as you mentioned, the 3 levels of government working together. Never seen that before. Mm-hmm. But it's a positive. It's a sign of that's how we should do things in the future. So I think it sets the city up, it sets the state up, and it gives our children a big opportunity to dream, to be the next Kate Campbell, to be the next Logan Martin. I mean, these are incredible opportunities that come along once in a lifetime, and out there in our schools now are children swimming that extra lap, running that extra lap around the oval, dreaming that they could one day participate in a local homegrown Olympics.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, I was 20-ish, sort of covered the Olympics torch relay as it went around Queensland, and I was on there with David Luttrell, who's now at Nova, and we used to have this joke every day where we'd be in sort of Calliope, and we'd say the eyes of the world are on Calliope, as the torch sort of runs down the main street. But truly, what we're going to have is the eyes of the world being on this city. How's that going to play out? Like, have you got, think back to say, those iconic moments of Barcelona or whatever. Do you think we're going to have those moments, and how do we take advantage of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember watching the Barcelona Olympics, and I think many people remember that as well. And my image is with the diving, and you had the city in the background. And I remember thinking, I want to go there one day. And that's exactly what I did. When I went to study in London, I spent 4 days in Barcelona because I was inspired by what I saw in the Olympics.
Yeah.
And it's about the athletes, it's about watching it, but it's also about the city, the lifestyle, the people, the architecture, everything that Barcelona offered, I was drawn to. So if it can have that impact on me, it's going to have an impact on millions of people around the world. We're already seen as, beautiful one day, perfect the next, beautiful one day, Olympic state the next. It is just going to be phenomenal, and the opportunities that it will bring to this state, billions of dollars of investment. And if you think about it, we've had Tokyo, we're going to have Paris, LA, Brisbane. We are going to be an Olympic city, an Olympic state, something I never thought would happen in my lifetime.
Okay, I might just throw to the wider panel then. Is anyone here spending $6 billion on tourism infrastructure in Queensland fortuitously at this point in time? Of course, it's Kelvin representing Star here today. It seems a pretty good bet when you guys, 10 years ago started talking about building Queen's Wharf and the new stuff down the Gold Coast. It's certainly paid off. What is the outlook for tourism in the next decade?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Chris. We're incredibly buoyant and confident in the market. We have been for a number of years. That's why we're spending $6 billion on infrastructure. And hopefully over the course of between now and when we get to 2032, we'll have something that the whole region will be really, really proud of, and it will be those iconic shots that the Premier referred to in Barcelona. Hopefully, we'll play a part in that. I guess for us, and one of the the reasons underpinning our investment in the region is let's have a look at the region where we are in southeast Queensland. 300 plus days a year of sunshine. Where else can you get an island experience, an outback experience, a hinterland experience, the world's best beaches north and south of the city? Nowhere else in the world. It's accessible within a 3-hour drive radius. When we go live to the world, that will create incredible demand for years, further, because we could never, expect to take advantage of that destinational, marketing opportunity that we're going to get that the Olympics brings. So we're very, very buoyant. You only have to look at our markets. Our domestic market is increasing, and that particularly through migration already. We've seen that before COVID and during COVID. People want to come to Queensland. That's going to drive the revenues and the demand into our tourism assets. You look internationally, hopefully once those borders open, we'll see that return. Our number one source market before was China. We participated in a survey with the universities last year. We went to 2,500 Chinese families across 10 cities. Their aspirational destination is Australia, and second only to Japan in the world. And then their number one aspirational destination to study is in Australia as well. We should be able to take advantage
We'll
of
let
that.
them back in soon, won't we, Premier?
I'm not in charge of the international borders. The state borders, December 17.
Can't wait. Debbie, you talk about attracting people to visit. You've had success in attracting world-class researchers to come to Brisbane. We're talking about infrastructure and so on, but human capital is going to be critical as well, isn't it, to be taking advantage of the next decade?
Absolutely, Chris. But I mean, I think, as we think about the legacy, I think we also need, and I know the Premier's doing this and lots of people, but what's the legacy in terms of our economy over this period of time? And there's many reasons why having this long lead time into the Olympics is very, very positive. We've got 10 and a bit years. But the thing is, we need to diversify our economy. There's lots that's changing in the future of work, new industries, new products. How do we use this period to really mature what I would call our innovation ecosystem? We've got lots of parts to it. There's lots of work that's going into thinking about, future battery industries, ag tech. There's so many things, biomanufacturing, where Queensland has got real strengths. And how do we really think, as we think about the world's going to have its eyes on Brisbane and the state of Queensland in 2032, what does our economy look like? And how are we going to keep attracting talent? And talent is attracted to where great things are happening, where there's jobs, a great place to live, and that's our opportunity. And certainly from the university sector and the research sector, we will absolutely be part of that.
George, how else do we, in a business sense, how else do we spark innovation and investment and create that, people wanting to move their businesses to Queensland or establishing them, building them up here?
Yeah, Chris, if I add to Deb's comments and also linking in the point that the Premier and Kate made, there's no doubt this is going to inspire a whole lot of youth to become the athletes of tomorrow. We should also have the objective for this to inspire the next lot of innovators and creators in Queensland, right? And why shouldn't Queensland be known for robotics, for biomedical engineering, for software engineering? We've got great resources for sustainable production right here in Queensland. And just to give you one small example, so the Logie Awards are designed and manufactured by a company in Queensland called UAP. So what they've done is they've got the old railway warehouses, and they've got the latest robotics in Queensland with engineers kind of designing and providing some of the great art around the world and in Australia. So you can see if we're all about creating this festive environment for the locals, as well as the tourists, by the way, where we're providing artistic elements, we're actually manufacturing those artistic elements, we're using local produce that's sustainably delivered, we can actually provide unique experiences in Queensland that no one else can. So this is just a really amazing opportunity, and Premier and everyone involved, you should be really congratulated.
One thing we spoke about a lot during our series of Future Brisbane was this idea of the opportunity for South East Queensland to become the sports tech hub of the Asia Pacific. UQ, I think, is already ranked second in the world of sports science. How do we build on that, Debbie?
Absolutely. So number 2 in the world. We've been in that position for quite some time. Loughborough University in the UK is number 1. Their position really aided by the London Olympics and what came out of that. But sports tech, it's about, wearables, big data, cloud services, AI. Now, that's not only important for sport and health, it's important to the jobs and the industries of the future. So all of those, cloud services, big data analytics, AI, they will be absolutely the tools and the capabilities that will drive jobs and industries. And so sport tech absolutely is a great focus.
Which probably leads to our first question. And George, you have touched on this, but Kate Mayrick, who is a great supporter of these conversations. She's asked what are the other new sectors of the economy that we have the opportunity to develop world-leading capability, in beyond that. I just might throw that open to the panel. You spoke about robotics. What else is cooking out there that we can really rip into?
The way I would look at it is kind of actually before this pandemic, we thought about manufacturing or things being done elsewhere, right? And really the new trend and the new, what it's about is local, right? And actually being able to do things in an innovative way from start to end in Queensland is, I think, what our objective should be. There's no doubt, look, don't get me wrong, we should be connected with the world. And in fact, one of the known benefits of an Olympics, and it's quite consistent throughout all of the Olympics, is that it does actually improve exporting. Out of Queensland, it will improve exporting, so it helps small businesses make their name. It's the connections, it's the, really showcasing Queensland that makes a big difference. So we've just got to be ambitious about what we can do here and developing the skill base actually in Queensland and really supporting that. Now, I do think that requires coordination. It requires government, it requires education areas, the banks providing the facilities, and obviously business getting together to really have a plan, which is really the point you started off with.
Debbie?
But it's playing to our areas of competitive strength, identifying what they are, absolutely keeping more of the value chain in Queensland because, that's going to be critical. But we've got tremendous strengths, areas like agriculture, tremendous strengths in critical minerals. They are absolutely essential to future batteries, etc. How we keep more of that value chain in Queensland. And, as Ian Chubb famously said, previous Chief Scientist of Australia, it takes three to tango. Government, universities in the research sector and industry coming together, understanding where our competitive strengths are and playing to them.
And I think a good example of that too, just picking up on your point, is what we're doing with hydrogen. So we can envisage using hydrogen more in the Olympics in 2032, but we're actually got something the world needs. So our sunshine will be converted into renewable clean hydrogen, and we're actually facilitating that by attracting big investment from Fortescue Industries into Gladstone, making the electrolysers, setting aside the area of state development land for that. And what we're doing now is making sure we link with the local schools to get the skills that are needed so people have a pathway into long-term secure jobs. So it's happening in a variety of industries where our economy is diversifying and we're actually leading the way.
And biomedical, another area. We've had huge, very significant commercialisation, obviously out of our discoveries here in Queensland, Gardasil, Vaxis, absolutely critical. We've now attracted Stryker, Fortune 500 company based at Hurston, major R&D facility and partnership with both UQ and QUT. And what will that drive in terms of startups, scale-up facilities? Queensland's got a great track record in that area. And how do we bring those partners in and really make sure that we capitalise across the whole innovation pipeline?
Premier Clarissa Brandt, you spoke about hydrogen. She says that construction is responsible for 40% of carbon emissions. She's asking, will you follow French leadership and introduce a sustainability law in terms of using renewable bio-based materials as we build out Olympics infrastructure? Yeah,
well, one of the strengths of our bid was our commitment to sustainability, and they were very impressed with our investment in the Great Barrier Reef, our investment to put in legislation to ban the use of plastics, but also too they were impressed with our discussions about hydrogen. So I think you see Queensland going through a massive change at the moment, where we are very energy rich, we are very resource rich, we actually have it all. And if you don't think we're energy rich and resource rich, we will be able to manufacture in Queensland the gold for the gold medals, the silver for the silver medals, and the what's needed for the bronze medal. So it's all sourced locally and very much on a by Queensland utilising local produce and local minerals.
We could introduce a vanadium medal for fourth, potentially.
Well, vanadium, I'm told, is a bit
Does it even
reactive.
exist?
So yes, it does. We've just approved a big vanadium mine up outside of Townsville, and we're actually doing a vanadium processing facility. So needed for batteries. So very important that we've got the new economy minerals which are needed for Queensland. And wouldn't it be wonderful to manufacture batteries here in Queensland, wind turbines here, solar panels here, and not have to import them?
George, do you agree with this idea of this is an opportunity for Queensland to be a leader in terms of climate leading businesses, innovation, that sort of stuff?
Chris, absolutely. And this, one point we talked about is how do we inspire youth. The other point is how do we actually attract talent, right? So there is a real war for talent. We all know about it globally. But if you look at Queensland, and Brisbane in particular, and Sunshine Coast and Gold Coast, this is a very livable place, right? The sun shines. You look at looking at Tim. The innovation that we've got in terms of our buildings with rooftop terraces and all of that, and then the investment in infrastructure. But because when you look at young people, one of the critical things that they look at is how easy do I get around. Right? So it's got to be a low-cost, easy way of transport. And then, what's the lifestyle like? And actually, we've planned this city really well, and we're quite innovative and progressive in terms of kind of building that lifestyle. So my sense is that we've got to go hard at attracting, at the right time with the health, etc., attracting talent into Queensland and developing those capabilities.
Now, talent's interesting in the tourism and hospitality sector too, right, Kelvin? I think my sense is, although outside in, is that, for too long, tourism and hospitality has sort of been seen as the thing you might do at uni on your way through to the next career.
Correct, yes.
What's the opportunity there?
Yeah, there's a great opportunity for us to, develop career pathways and sustainable career pathways that go beyond 2032. I think the challenge for us, to your point, it's always been seen as that stepping stone, but it comes back to being able to attract the best talent, being able to work, with our industry partners, whether it be TAFE, whether it be the universities, and even us internally, in terms of us developing a learning and development academy for the tourism industry. If we get that right, we will solve some of the problems that we currently experience where it's very transitional. But for me, as I said, and very much at start, we're on an upward trajectory whereby in Brisbane alone, in a little over 18 months when we open Queen's Wharf, we'll require another 3,000 employees. Okay, and then with the development at the Gold Coast, that sits currently at around about 2,500 team members. We'll increase up to, again, 3,500 down there. So by the time we're finished our developments in both Brisbane and the Gold Coast, we're employing around about 8,000 team members. But it's important to also note that it's not just limited to, service roles, and that we need to make sure that we have sustainable pathways for talented team members in IT, marketing, legal, and that so that we offer a complete suite, I guess, of career opportunities.
One from the floor for you, Premier. This is from Mari Mortimer, and she asks, for the businesses in the room, does the government have a procurement strategy and procurement targets for the Olympics to ensure that Queensland businesses are prioritised? Feels like you might have put Mari up to that one.
Well, we definitely have a buy local policy with procurement, and we've already called for expressions of interest of businesses that will be interested in being part of this journey, and we've already had 2,000 businesses that have registered for that. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity, but not just southeast, it needs to be right across the state. So whether it's fresh produce which is needed for the Games and the lead up to the Games, whether it's the medals we spoke about earlier, whether it's building the infrastructure, the chairs, the seating, anything else that's needed. We've got to maximise that Queenslanders get the opportunity first to produce that. And I think you'll notice over the coming years there will be more and more opportunities for businesses to participate in that.
Now, Mel has a sort of follow-up to that question, and Mel's only got a first name, probably a Brazilian soccer player. Welcome. Mel asks, how do we make sure small businesses get a fair go at participating? And George, I know, you're passionate about growing small businesses. How do we go about that to plug into the procurement stuff?
I mean, what normally happens at Olympics, the larger end of town does kind of have a bit of an advantage. It's through their sponsorships. It's just a lot easier for them. I do think, again, if we focus on what's this local unique experience in Queensland, that would then have a bias to smaller businesses. Yeah. And I know the Premier's got plans in terms of how to make that easier for them. The other thing to note is if you think about where we are right at this point in time, we're going into 12 months of very strong economic recovery, which is encouraging. If you look at our business lending, which is primarily all small business, that's growing at 10% per annum now in the last 3 months. So, people want to spend, businesses want to invest in growth. So the timing for businesses to kind of set up and think about that future state is almost, is a really good spot to be in.
I think that's interesting. I think somebody's asking here, Kelvin, will there be a facility for super yachts at Queen's Wharf?
As part of our redevelopment...
No idea who that might be.
As part of our redevelopment, we do have waterfront access, albeit not as large as we'd like to be, so I'm not sure how many we'll be able to accommodate.
Hey, Premier, a lot of the conversation as we talk about sports, tech and the opportunities, a lot of it's sort of gone back to the Australian Institute of Sport and the fact that it's set up in our capital in the middle of a sheep paddock that's too cold in winter and too hot in summer. And
I agree with you on that. Let's move them up here.
Well, okay, so how do we go about that? How do we go about convincing the federal government that's a good idea?
I think we need to poach as many sports as possible. This is our opportunity. We were the sports capital of Australia over this last year. I remember just reporting in Parliament this morning, we had 2 million people who went and watched some kind of sport in Queensland. If you think about that in other parts of the world where children haven't been able to go to school, people haven't been able to go to venues, in Queensland people were able to enjoy their sport. And it was something that the Olympic Committee looked at and were very proud of, the fact that we had such a strong health response and sport. Queenslanders love their sport and were able to enjoy that. So I think we have the QAS, the Queensland Academy of Sport, which is going really well. We've given them an extra injection of funds. But anything we can do to attract more headquarters here, and we are in some confidential discussions at the moment.
Just friends here, it's fine.
That's right. 600 of our closest friends. Look how close we're sitting.
And all on the record, Premier.
Exactly. So I just think there's a lot of opportunity, and if we can get more headquarters here, and it's going to make sense, isn't it? Because over the next 10 years, this is going to be where the action is. And why would you not want to either base your sport on the Gold Coast, the Sunshine Coast, or in Brisbane? There are so many opportunities. It just makes sense. And especially when the athletes go, we think we'd actually prefer to be in Queensland as well.
Have you spoken to the Prime Minister about that? Does he even know we're having an Olympics?
Yes, of course he does. He signed off on the funding agreement with me,
that's
Chris.
Right, I remember that. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I just assumed that he's from Sydney, so he's got no idea. It'll come as a shock in 2032 and the Olympics are in Brisbane.
I'm quite sure he knows where Queensland is. I think Queensland's very important to him over the coming months.
How good is it? Andrew Chapman has a question, I think for you here, Premier. The Japanese saw the Tokyo Olympics in 1964, it's a good history lesson, as a way of creating a transport network, blah, blah, blah. Basically, they got high-speed rail out of it. Are we going to get high-speed rail to the Sunshine Coast?
We're going to get faster rail. We're not going to get high-speed rail.
Faster.
The high-speed rail it costs billions and billions of dollars, and you need to have the population to sustain it. We do not have the population to sustain it. But we are building at the moment Queensland's biggest underground system through Brisbane. And that is transformational. Already the first tunnel has been completed, over $5 billion investment, and that is going to be transformational for when you see the Gabba, which has to be completely demolished and rebuilt up again, linked in with the Gabba station and the opportunities that that presents for future development and housing, etc. Then you go under the river. It stops for the first underground station in 100 years built in Brisbane at Albert Street, and then continues up to Roma Street, which of course is going to be the home of Brisbane Live. So it'll be a music venue which will probably be built earlier than the Olympics 2032, but it will then become the home of our swimming competition, where we will drop the pool into that Brisbane Live venue. And then that is also transformational there for development around the old Roma Street parkland. So the Roma Street station. So the next time you're driving through the city, have a look at the signs. That is basically where new precincts are going to pop up, because Cross River Rail is being built underneath our city as we speak. So the first tunnel's completed and the second one's under construction.
Hey, just on the Gabba, and I know we want to talk about legacy, but
oh, it's going to be fantastic. I am so excited about the redevelopment of the Gabba.
where are you going to put the warm-up track? You're still sticking with the thing up near the Pineapple
so
Hotel?
Actually, this was actually, when you're talking about innovation, this is an idea that Populous put to us, and they have been involved in. This is a Queensland company. We were talking before about Queensland businesses and companies that have actually done Olympic venues in London, and they're building all around the world, and they are based here in Queensland. And for the Gabba to work, we needed a warm-up track. We looked at putting it underneath the Gabba, which just couldn't quite work. And then we were able to notice that there were the ovals up near the Pineapple Hotel, and it actually worked. And the Olympic Committee loved it. And once again, the Gabba is used often. It's not going to be a white elephant, and the legacy of that redeveloped Gabba is going to be, phenomenal for generations to come. So, very, very excited by that.
You can take Thomas Bark to the Pineapple?
Thomas Bark to the Pineapple, the big Pineapple or the Pineapple Hotel?
Probably the Pineapple Hotel, but
Thomas Bark has been out here. He loves Brisbane, he loves Queensland, and I know that all of the members of the Olympic Committee will fall in love with this state. Those images, can I just say to everyone, like when we were actually in Tokyo, and it's actually, it really pulls at the heartstrings, because you're there in front of the Olympics Committee and we're all wearing face masks, and everyone has to be, seated a metre apart, and you're there talking about your state and what the Olympics means to the people and how much we love our sport and what it means for infrastructure. And then you see these beaming images and it makes you really homesick. And then you see back home in Brisbane the fireworks and everyone jumping up and down, Natalie Cook there jumping up and down and clapping. And the people in the room there, the Olympic Committee members, stood up and just applauded. Like some of them had tears in their eyes. It was just so overwhelming. And the song that was sung in Indigenous language to John Farnham's The Voice, those images were just spellbinding. And just wait till the world sees all of that. If that's what we can do to the Olympic Committee and make men and women who have made decisions for decades stand up, applaud and have tears in their eyes, you're doing something right. I've never been more proud.
Yeah. And like I say, I'm confident that it's going to be the best Olympics ever. I think we've only got a few minutes left, so let's just loop back to this idea of legacy. And Debbie, in your opinion piece for us recently, you spoke about, hey, there's a whole lot of infrastructure being built and that's all great and that'll all happen. But the lasting legacy is where you want the conversation to be. Have you got any ideas about how we can make sure that we don't lose sight of that, of that conversation and stick with it?
Yeah, no, it's a really important conversation, and obviously the infrastructure is part of it, but the other part of it is what the legacy is around it. And obviously the government has now gone out and is consulting around innovation places. I think that is absolutely critical because, you know, we do have some innovation precincts, obviously in Queensland, but if we can do more of that, and that's where we bring R&D, industry, startups together, that's where new ideas happen. You know, you only need to go to MIT in Boston and there's all those companies sitting around MIT because cool things are happening there and people want to be there, they want to interact and come up with, you know, what are the new jobs, what are the new industries. So I think the opportunity here is how we strengthen and diversify our economy at a time where that's going to have to happen all around the world.
And sort of picking up that point, Kelvin, we talk a lot about 2032. Let's talk, actually, as Jason said, let's talk about 2035 or 2040. The Queensland that we want it to be, if we then rewind to 2022, what are we doing in 2022 that allows us to get to there?
Yeah, I think for us, you know, from a tourism perspective, it's all about it being sustainable for the long term. And to do that, we need great investment in our infrastructure. We need to be innovative in terms of the product that we have. I mean, if you look at both London and also the success of Sydney, I think we can all recall when, you know, post-Sydney, you'd be trying to go down there and stay in a hotel. There was no availability and you're paying premium rates. And that was a legacy of the Games. And that's so they continued to build on their infrastructure. Their tourism product continued to reimagine itself and be innovative. And that's what we need to start the conversation about now and continue it through up into including the Games.
George, same question. So what are those Queenslanders in 2040 saying to us, hey guys, get your act together, it's 2022, let's do this?
Chris, I've got to start by saying there's going to be real benefits in the infrastructure now. Right? So if you think about the productivity that small businesses will get out of this year in, year out, that's really important because then they can reinvest. I go back to Deborah's point. Innovation occurs when you've got connections. So precincts are really important, and how do we actually foster that? And back to your original point, in a sense that you almost need a cross-functional group that thinks about this and potentially provides advice to government and others in terms of how we as a community really get behind this and understand what's required to get that innovation edge.
It's interesting you say that because Stuart Giles here has asked, in context of legacy, if we consider BOCOG, the organising committee, will have a clear event delivery objective and infrastructure being the priority of government, what other structures, Premier, do we need to engage and coordinate this room and also Queensland's brightest minds to feed into that process outside of the IOC-led do this then?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I do think we need some of our best and brightest minds in Queensland to come together to form like a legacy committee. I think we had that with the Commonwealth Games. I think that could have been a bit more productive, but it worked. But I honestly do think there is so much untapped talent in this state. I'm in awe every time I go to a new business or an export industry. I'm like, how come I don't know about that? You know, we've got people exporting testing kits over to the US for COVID. We've got vaccines being developed by vaxxers by just having a patch on to administer, which is going to be phenomenal for third world countries that can't store it in cold climates. So look, I do think it's really important. Let's look at that. Let's look at who's going to be on that, who's going to chair that, because I think that's going to be some good advice coming in because technology is changing so quickly. So, you know, 20 years ago they didn't have drones being part of an Olympics opening ceremony. What is going to look like in 10 years' time? Our technology is moving so quickly that we may even have a whole new sport.
A million drones above
might
the
have
gather.
something completely different. Who knows?
It's in a shape of Alfie Langer or something.
And I might end on the point we started earlier where we were talking about robotics. And I know former Minister Kate Jones is here in this room, and when she was Education Minister, we actually put together the idea of actually teaching children robotics and coding from primary school. And that is happening now in every state primary school across our state, setting them up for the future so they have the skills. I don't know anywhere else in the world that's doing that at the moment. So let's get on board, let's think about this legacy committee, let's get the best and brightest minds, the best innovators out there to come together, and let's work towards 2032.
I love that idea, and I think that's a great outcome of Future Brisbane, that we establish that committee to get, you know, the people who otherwise wouldn't have the vehicle to get involved in that conversation, really lead that conversation, and connect up governments and business to make sure that in 2040, as Queenslanders, we don't look back on this amazing once-in-a-forever opportunity and think, oh, gee, we missed that. 0-0. Thank you all for your time. We've run out of time, and really appreciate it. Thank you very much.